With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Limestone Farms bourbons defy the typical that high proof means less depth and smoothness. Great crafting and blending of our rare and exotic mash bills are here to change the bourbon world. From the first sip, we invite you to discover our bourbons that are deep in Kentucky tradition and richly one of a kind. Limestone Farms, dedicated to excellence.
Porch Kitchen and Bar serves as downtown Louisville's living room, connecting people over comfort food and a soulful experience. As a member of the Urban Bourbon Trail, their award-winning spirits collection is flowing from craft cocktails or creative flights in an impressive single-barrel collection. Swing on by, come for the food and drinks, and stay for the conversation.
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here in the Bourbon Life Studios tonight is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how are you doing out there in front of the Bourbon Life fireplace?
Mark, I'm doing well. In light of not being around the Bourbon Life table here with our guest, being in front of the fireplace is a nice close second.
All right,
I'll take it.
Good alternative, right?
Yeah.
And here we are finishing out dry January tonight. It is the last day of January. We are 5 hours short.
Yeah, not that you're counting down or anything,
yeah.
Right?
Well, I guess as you say, technically we're 4 hours and 50 minutes and a few seconds short, but not that I'm counting or keeping track, Matt. So, but yeah, we got a good show lined up tonight. I'm excited about it, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. A little bit different for us, but somebody that's a key player in the bourbon industry. So it's going to be a lot of fun to jump into that. Of course, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their sponsorship of our show. We couldn't do the show without them or the rest of our sponsors. We appreciate everything that those guys do for us. So thank you all very much for that. With that said, Matt, do you want to tell everybody who we do have with us tonight?
Absolutely. Joining us this evening, or you all this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whenever it is you're getting your Bourbon Life podcast, is the Vice President at Vendome Copper and Brass Works, Mike Sherman. Mike, welcome on to the Bourbon Life podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, Mike, this is going to be a lot of fun. You know, you're somebody I've had on the radar for quite some time to get on the show, and you and I actually met for the first time.
Got his name on our list, and it has been there for quite some time. Sorry to interrupt you there, Mark. I've just had to put in, this really has been a show a long time in the making.
Yeah, it has been, Mike. You know, I met you for the first time at the Bourbon Festival in September, and I walked up to you and I'm like, "Hey, Mike, nice to meet you. You don't know me, but we've got a mutual friend that's an attorney." And he gave me your name and number. And you're like, "Wait a second, you got my number?" And I'm like, "Look, let me pull up my spreadsheet." I pulled my spreadsheet up on the phone. I'm like, "Here you go. There's Mike Sherman, and there's your phone number." You're like, "Yep, that's it. Just reach out to me. We'll make it happen." So I appreciate you joining us tonight, Mike. This is going to be a lot of fun. And like I said earlier in the intro, I mean, you're a key player. Your company is a key player in the bourbon industry, in the whiskey industry, around the globe, actually. And, you know, we'll jump into that and talk more about that. But before we get into that conversation, what I want to do, I want to tell everybody what we're going to be drinking. So what I did, I just chose some whiskey that is made off of your product. So I picked 3 producers, 2 Kentucky, 1 Tennessee. And I'll explain why I picked the Tennessee here a little bit later in round 2. But for the first round, we've got the Bardstown Bourbon Company. This is the Origin Series, and this is the little sample bottle they sent me. But this is their high rye. This is their own distillate, and that's why I wanted to choose it. Another reason I wanted to choose it is because they're kind of the new guard in Kentucky. I mean, it's a young company. They've only been around for not even 10 years yet. But they're making big waves, obviously doing a lot of things. in the industry, and they use your stills, which is really cool. So we're going with this. This one, I'm going to read my mash bill here. 60% corn, 36 rye, so it is a higher rye bourbon. 4% malted barley, aged for 6 years, 96 proof. So this is Bardstown, their own distillate. Matt, what do you pick up on the nose on this one, man?
I love the nose on this product. It is, to me, super sweet. It's got a really great nose of like graham cracker, sugar cookie, like nice, like snickerdoodle type, kind of that cinnamon. There's baking spice for sure in there, a little bit of raisin, just like all of those really, really nice, like sweet, warm flavors. But there's also some brightness that comes through from the high rye content on this, not just in the baking spice, but I think that rye really kind of punches and brings some peppercorn, some nice lighter flavors as well. A little bit of like kettle corn too. Just a really, really beautiful nose.
Yeah, it is, Matt. I agree with that, man. Lots of vibrant flavors and aromas coming out of this. And I haven't visited on this one in quite a while. I can't remember the last time I took a sip of this one. So very nice though to get to nose this. Like I said, 36% rye, so it is a high rye. 96 proof. It doesn't bowl you over. It doesn't knock you out. With the proof point. I can't wait to taste it though. But yeah, man, I mean, I can't really add much more other than you made me hungry for cookies. I'm craving like do they make raisin snickerdoodles? Because now I'm like thinking raisin cookies and snickerdoodles together. So, Mike, what do you pick up? Anything else on the nose that stands out to you on this one?
No, I think Matt pretty much nailed it. But naturally when I think of a higher rye, I'm always thinking spicier and things like that. But this definitely has some sweetness to it and very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. They've done a great job. Bardstown Bourbon Company, just a great group. Love those guys down there. Love working with them. They've always been super accommodating to us, when we need something. So just really appreciate them. But yeah, I'm happy we get to kind of feature them with this, with your products. But Mike, let's talk about you before we jump into your products and what you guys do. If you would just take some time, kind of share your background, how you got started. Obviously, you can tell the story of the business in second round, but let's just kind of talk about you and your background, how you got into everything.
Yeah. So, I was born and raised in Louisville and St. Xavier High School, didn't leave for college, went to the University of Louisville, actually got a couple degrees down there, computers, information science and data processing was my first degree, and then went to work at Vendome. And a few years after I went to work down there, I decided or was told I should go back and get a mechanical engineering degree, and went back and pieced that together while I was working down there and everything, and got my mechanical engineering degree. And after my first degree, the day after I graduated from U of L, I showed up on the doorsteps at Vendome, and of course, for those that don't know, it's a family-owned business. My great-grandfather started the company, and so I showed up on the doorsteps and walked in the office and told my dad, I was like, well, I'm here, what do you want me to do? And he sent me down to the machine shop, and we were drilling these big I think they're about 104-inch diameter, 2-inch thick tube sheets for some reboilers for Midwest grains. And they all had to be, all the tube sheets, I don't know how many holes were in them, but I can tell you it took me all summer long, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week to drill holes in these things. And thinking to myself the whole time, what have I gotten myself into? But the rest is history. Just fell in love with it. Wouldn't change a thing. Started in the shop, working out there in the summers during high school and college, and just learning the business from the ground up and everything. And like I said, worked in the machine shop and went out in the field and did some installs, and just learned every aspect of the business before, moving into the office and starting to work with customers and doing more sales and project managing. And it was definitely the best way to learn the business, and I'm glad it worked out that way.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, when you were younger, was it just kind of thought that, hey, this is what's going to happen, you're going to go into the family business, or was it something that as you got older and got your degrees, you thought, you know what, maybe I could do this?
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, on Saturday mornings, I don't know how many Saturday mornings, my dad would wake me up. This is probably when I was 9, 10, 11 years old. And my dad owned racehorses and still does. And we would go out to Churchill Downs on the backside on Saturday morning early, before the sun was up, and watch the horses work, eat breakfast on the backside.
Yeah.
And then from there, we would stop at the little convenience store by the track, grab a racing form for the day, and we would go to Vendome, and he would work, and I would sit there and read the racing form. And I was like, so I was always around the company.
Yeah.
And it, naturally at that point, I was more interested in the horses and the racing form than I was Vendome. But as I got older and everything and realized what they did, and this is a pretty cool place, and went on sales trips in the summertime with my dad. I remember getting in the car with him, driving down to Jack Daniels or George Dickel or Wild Turkey or wherever he was going. And he'd be like, "What are you doing today?" I'm like, "Nothing." He's like, "Come on, get in the car." And he would just talk, business, and it just kind of grew on me. So then when I was in college, it was kind of like, this is a cool place, and I think I would be interested in working down there. And my dad never pushed me. He was like, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, no big deal. We'll find, you got to do what you're going to be happy at. And I just remember going down there after college and, like I said, working out in the shop those first few years. And then he was like, "So what do you think?" And I was like, "Yeah, I like it. I think I'd like to stick around and keep doing it." And he's like, that's when he said, "Great, go back and get a mechanical engineering degree." And I was like, "Oh, wait a minute. I didn't know that was part of the deal." But he was like, "Well, you're going to be working with engineers all your life. You need to understand what's going on." So I went back and pieced a mechanical engineering degree together, and again, great decision. He knew what he was talking about, and the rest is history.
Yeah, but that's been impressive. Those two degrees, because I did an MBA at UK and had to take some of those computer or the information sciences classes.
Yeah, right.
Let me tell you, man, I was just like, and I consider myself to be a fairly smart guy, Mike, but goodness, I was just like, nope, I can't do this. I don't understand it. I can't do this, the planning, the strategy, I just couldn't do it. I mean, I really I struggled significantly. And then to go from that and then go back and get a mechanical engineering degree, that's a lot of work, man. I mean, that's that's really impressive. No kidding.
I tell you what, though, I will say going back and getting the ME as I was a little bit older and a little bit more mature was a lot easier than as an 18 or 19-year-old kid going to college.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think we all kind of understand that for sure. Yeah. No doubt about it. Well, it's kind of funny because we've had a couple, father-son type of deals on here, and one of my favorites was Fred and Freddie No. Talking about that, and the dynamic with Fred and Freddie is really, really unique. And then Fred also shares, the dynamic that he had with his dad, Booker,
right.
Which, he's like, he started out and Booker's like putting him in the low man job and like, you got to start.
Oh yeah. I heard those stories before.
Yeah. So what was it like working for your dad? I mean, did you kind of feel that kind of same thing? It's like dad starts me at the bottom and works me up to the top maybe, or?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I walked in and he was like, "Go down to the machine shop and Tim's got a job for you." And literally we worked it was a 7-day a week, 12 hours a day. I mean, paycheck was great. I was like, this is nice. But I mean, it was literally jeans and a t-shirt sitting on top. I mean, these tube sheets were so big. We were actually sitting on top of the tube sheets with the drill press, drilling them all day long. I mean, they were, so, but he knew he knew exactly what he was doing. Right. Burn it from the ground up. Mm-hmm. There were days I'm like, this is bullshit. I don't know about this. Yeah. But if any of my kids decide to come down and go into the business, that's exactly how they're going to learn it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's great. It makes a lot of sense to start, you learn every aspect of the business And then I think it teaches you two things: respect for the people that do those jobs.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But then also just the knowledge that you have that you could step in if you needed to, and understand how your business works. And I think that's a key component that a lot of business owners that just walk right into the upper level management,
Right.
they miss out on
Exactly.
that, right? So that's really cool. Now, Mike, do you have other? I mean, are there other siblings or anybody else that in the family that work? And I mean, how broad of a family business is it at this point?
Yeah. So my great grandfather started the business around 1903. Then my grandfather ran the business as a second generation, and then my dad and uncle were third generation.
Okay.
Tom and Dick Sherman, and then this generation, the fourth generation, is myself, my sister. I have two cousins, also as fourth generation owners, and then a couple other cousins that are still working there, that work there as well. So this is the first generation that went beyond siblings, and naturally we've all been down there 30 plus years now, and everything's good, and I'm not worried about the fourth generation. Now it's like, okay, we gotta get this thing ready for the fifth generation, hopefully one day. So
Yeah. So now, are there other generational at that fifth level at this point that are coming in or ready, or at that point, are they old enough to do that yet? Or
so three of us have had kids working there over the summer and stuff like that. And I think there will be a couple, maybe a few that are interested in running with the business. You know, like my dad did with me, I will never force my kids to come on, you got to come down here and work and carry on the legacy. No, not at all. I mean, if they want to, great. If they don't want to, that'll be fine as well. But there are, I do believe we'll have a few fifth generations that are interested in keeping the business going, and that will be exciting to see how they come in one day and run with it.
yeah, no, I mean, and that's great. So your great grandfather, was he a Sherman? Is it the family name?
Yeah. Elmore Sherman,
Okay.
Senior, and he worked for a company that was based in Cincinnati that had a division in Louisville, and it was a coppersmith company.
Okay.
And they made copper stills and copper steel parts for the stills and everything, and that division in Louisville was going to close down for whatever reason. And whether he went in and bought that division or whether he went next door and started up and hired everyone who was getting laid off,
Right.
that's a little sketchy. We're not really sure of the story there, but we do know about 1903, 1904, Vendome was formed and started showing up in some trade magazines and stuff like that. And, like I said, it's 120 years old this year. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And we'll talk some more in round two about the history and the creation of the brand and everything. I'm just kind of curious. I always like to ask our guests this question, especially since we're a bourbon podcast. Mike, is bourbon something, and you're from Louisville, obviously, so is bourbon something that you kind of grew up around and grew up enjoying, or was that something, have you acquired a taste for it maybe in your older years?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, naturally, I remember my dad coming home after work and fixing him a bourbon. I mean, that was kind of the thing around the house. I mean, he pretty much nightly he'd have a little drink before dinner, and I probably didn't really acquire a taste probably until I was after college and stuff like that, and then really started appreciating the flavor and the taste and the different brands and stuff like that. More just beer and stuff like that during college, and then started getting a little more sophisticated and stuff after college.
Yeah.
So, but I do enjoy. I call myself more of a depends on what the situation is drinker. So I got bourbons that I enjoy, and I really enjoy a lot of different bourbons, but it also depends on, if it's a tailgate, it might be one thing, something in Coke, or if it's sitting out by a fire, sipping on something neat or on the rocks, it might be a little bit something different. But I think it depends on the situation for me on what I'm drinking. But I definitely enjoy my bourbon.
Yeah, that's awesome. And speaking of bourbon and enjoying it, let's jump back over to this Bardstown Origin Series, their high rye release. Matt, what do you pick up in terms of the palate and the finish on this one?
The sweetness comes across for me from the nose to the palate. I get that sweet graham cracker again, or like that sweet cookie right on the front of the palate. There's a little bit of like vanilla buttercream, some frosting or icing comes across too with the sweetness. And then I think the rye plays for me. I pick up oranges, like a spicy, like orange marmalade, like a clove orange marmalade. Comes across on the palate. Then a nice spicy finish. The rye really comes through, shines in that finish. Nice peppery, spicy, warm finish with it. Just really, really nice product. I think it drinks a little warmer than 96 proof, but certainly a very, very good product.
Yeah, it's funny, Matt, because I get that sweetness initially, but man, that rye spice just seems like it punches me really quick. And you're talking about drinking higher than 96 proof, and I'm sure it's that rye, 36%, rye mash bill that comes in and really, kind of tricks my palate to make me think that it's higher than 96 proof, because it does. You talked about the lingering peppercorn, that finish on it. That hits me right up front. Almost, I get a little sweetness, but then almost instantly it is just spice and peppercorn. But I enjoy it. I mean, I like it. It's not overwhelming, but yeah, it definitely punches above its 96 proof weight class, but definitely an enjoyable pour. 6 years old from Bardstown Bourbon Company. You can't go wrong. So, Mike, what about you? Anything on the palate and the finish that you pick up on that?
I think y'all hit it right on the nose. I mean, I really, again, I'm not a huge rye drinker, and typically I'm thinking harsh and that spice and that, but I mean, while you get some of that at the end of it, like you all talked about, it's not overwhelming. Yeah. That's the first time I've had that product, and I really, really like it.
Yep. I'm just kind of curious. So
take a little more.
How cool is it to, how cool is it to be like, hey, yeah, this is made on, something that actually I made, my company made this. I mean, that's got to be kind of a good feeling, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, when there are times when we, sometimes alone or sometimes just, fourth generation, we'll be around talking and we'll be like, man, that's, you sit back and you think about it. It is pretty cool. I mean, like our claim is, and I feel pretty confident about it. I mean, I probably don't have, I could probably dig it up and show the mathematical truth of it. But our claim is over 95% of all American whiskey is made on our equipment.
Oh.
I mean, because we do, when you talk about whiskey and not just bourbon, I mean, it's all whiskeys in America. And,
right.
I mean, every bit of Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, Heaven Hill, Wild Turkey, Four Roses, Buffalo Trace. I mean, like,
it's crazy.
It's all made on our equipment, and those guys are making over 95% of all of it in the world and
Sure.
the United States. So that's what we claim. It's probably even higher than 95%, but I feel really safe saying 95%.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's just awesome, Mike. I mean, it's really cool. It's got to be a great feeling. You're contributing to the happiness of the American society through your products, man. So
there you go.
That's great. Well, Matt, let's get your final thoughts, because we're at the end of round one here. So we'll wrap this session up on that. But what do you think? Final thoughts on this Bardstown Bourbon Company, the Origin Series High Rye Bourbon?
I think on February 1st, this would be a great place to start.
I know, Matt, we are 4.5 hours exactly away right now. 4 hours and 29 minutes. So I may have to set this by the nightside table or on the nightside table, wake up at midnight and take.
If I would have known this, I would have waited till next week to done this with you all. You ought to not divulge this information.
Mike, you're the 5th show we've done this month. So you know what? It's been a struggle for us. We broke on 2 weekends ago. We were at Bourbon Con here in Lexington, and we had Connor O'Driscoll from Heaven Hill, and we recorded in front of a live audience. So Matt and I both agreed just to forego dry January for those few hours that we were there, because I didn't think it'd be appropriate to be sitting there with Connor live in person and spitting his whiskey out and then doing it in front of a live audience at the same time. So yeah.
Right. That's probably a smart decision.
But other than that, man, we've stuck pretty hard to it. Matt's going to throw in a couple days, I think, extra just to make up for that Saturday that we blew. But I'm going to a bourbon tasting tomorrow night, so I'm back in full force. So
there you go.
Well, guys, I'll tell you what, let's take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Mike Sherman, the Vice President with Vendome, in just a minute.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky. Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they called Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for round 2 of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here tonight, live in the Bourbon Life Studios, otherwise known as my basement, it is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there?
Good, Mark. I am doing great. Sitting here just roasting away by the fireplace. How are you? How are things in Mission Control? You haven't been in there for a while.
It's under control. Yeah, you know, it's so funny. Again, Matt sat down tonight, and I'm like, looking at the buttons and the switches and everything, and I'm like, man, do I have everything turned on
just
here
started
tonight?
pushing stuff randomly.
How do random buttons pushed, and I'm like, I hope we're recording tonight. No, it's fun. You know, I enjoy doing this. You're recording this way. I'd like being in person, but when it doesn't work out, then obviously this is a great alternative for us. But yeah, it's just been kind of fun because we've had a lot of live shows. You know, people coming over and hanging out with us. But you know, obviously this is going to work for us as well, man. We're just happy to have our guests with us tonight. It's a great show so far, and I'm really looking forward to diving in some more with the history of his company here in just a few minutes. But before we do that, I do have to say, of course, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn, and we appreciate their support, and we appreciate all of our sponsors as well. We couldn't do this show without all their help. With that said, Matt, do you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
Definitely. Mike Sherman is the Vice President of Vendome Copper and Brass Works and Vendome Stills, and he is back for the second round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Mike, welcome on back.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we always thank our guests for sticking around. You know, nobody's left us yet. So, so we like to show our appreciation. So
yeah, we don't want to
leaving.
take one for granted because that's the show they're going to leave us after the first or second round.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's why we try to get people to come over here to the studio, Mike, because we can lock the little cat gate that I have down at the bottom of the stairs, and then people can't get back out. So you're stuck.
I hear you. I hear you.
All right. Well, this round, we're kind of doing something just a little bit different. And I kind of struggled. I told you before we started, I wanted to do something because, you know, people talk about stills and, you know, we talk about the column stills. And I think a lot of people, when they think of stills, that's something that comes to mind. You see these big, beautiful, shiny copper column stills in all these distilleries. But there's also, you know, pot stills out there that people utilize for different purposes. And I was trying to think of a Kentucky brand that utilizes just the pot from Vendome, and I couldn't come up with anybody off the top of my head when I was thinking about this. And this brand from Tennessee popped into my head. We had their master distiller, Greg, on the show with us. Gosh, Matt, that was probably, 2 years ago or more?
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah. So Sugarlands Distilling down in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. They also have their Roaming Man Rye releases that they do. So this is actually pot distilled. It is a rye whiskey, Tennessee rye. This is bottled in bond. And I think this is batch 12. And I think this is the first time they actually did bottled in bond. I think most of the time it was cask strength. And for this one, they dropped it to 100 proof, bottled in bond. So it has to be at least a minimum of 4 years. But yeah, so I thought it'd be kind of unique because it is pot distilled, which is a different process completely. And Mike, you can tell us a little bit more about that here in a few minutes. But Yeah, so it is a different process, obviously, than distilling on a column. So I chose that one. So here we are with Roaming Man Rye Whiskey from Sugarlands. Matt, what do you pick up on the nose on this one?
It's definitely got a little bit more of a funky nose to it. A lot of times, a pot distilled whiskey, at least to me, when I'm smelling one, will be, I don't want to say a little rougher around the edges, but a little less refined. You get a little bit more of some different notes. Like this one, to me, is a little bit grassy. I taste a little bit more of like that rye grain. There's some grass, like a little bit of hay or like barn wood type smell to it. But there's also some sweetness coming through. I get like a bubblegum type aroma with it.
Is that my Topps baseball baseball card?
I don't think it's the Topps baseball card this time, but there's maybe Bazooka Joe or something.
Okay, different type of gum, not those pink sticks out of the baseball card packs. All right, I'm with you.
But just a really nice nose as well. Very different from the first round, which I thought was had like some really pronounced nose. This nose notes. This is almost like a little more subtle, just a little like unrefined, like I said, but certainly not in a bad way. It's something I've really come to enjoy from a pot distilled product, is that you get some different notes and it'll leave you wondering, and it changes too. The longer it sits in the glass or it gets in the air, more this will open up as we're sitting and going through the round here. So I'll be curious to keep coming back to it.
Yeah, and Matt, I agree with you that in terms of what you talk about, you call it kind of funkiness, but that grassy barn kind of smell. I mean, I understand the hay kind of smell that goes with that. I definitely picked that up. To me, I was picking up almost like a syrupy kind of smell though, in terms of sweetness that was on this. Some sweetness coming through, almost not quite a maple syrup, but just a very sweet kind of candied sweetness to it.
It's almost like a floral sweetness, like a saccharine type, fruit or floral sweetness, but not like the flavor of anything floral or any specific fruit, like just kind of that sweetness.
Yeah. Mike, what about you? Anything that stands out in terms of the nose on this product for you?
I think you can definitely, smell that grain more compared to the first one, for sure. I think that's the one thing that I'm picking up more than anything.
Yeah, it's definitely got a unique nose to it. I'm a fan. I've had several different batches of the Roaming Man. Like I said, the ones before the batch 12, I think they did them all at cask strength, so there's a little bit of variation from that. And this batch 12 that I picked up is that 100 proof bottled in bond. So, and they switched it. I think they were using some smaller barrels originally. Now I think this is all 53 gallon. Yeah, 53 gallon barrels. So they've kind of changed a little bit in their production process, but I really enjoy the nose. We'll talk about the palate and the finish here in just a few minutes. So Mike, you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier about the history of the brand. Can you go back in and kind of just jump back into that and kind of expand on how things got started with Vendome?
Yeah. So like I said, my great grandfather, turn of the century, 1903, 1904, working for a division based out of Cincinnati, started, whatever reason they went out of business or closed that shop, started up. We got pictures from the early 1900s of steel sections being on a horse and buggy trailer type thing, and a guy sitting there with a shotgun at the head of it. I mean, it's like, what the, crazy stuff. And then the shop just being wood floors but the cool thing I always took out of those pictures was they were doing very similar things that we still do today.
Yeah.
I mean, copper hasn't really changed. Copper is very, you put heat to copper and you can form it to whatever shape you want to, and we still do that today. We form a lot of our especially on we're talking about pot stills right now. We form a lot of our parts for the pot stills by heating them up and beating them over fixtures to give it the radius or the shape or the diameter and everything that we want it to look like. And so it's kind of cool to see those old pictures of the shop in the early 1900s, and then today we're still doing very similar things. So, but I mean, Prohibition hit. We survived Prohibition. We dismantled a couple distilleries and took them one up into Canada and put it back up. There was a few distilleries open for medicinal purposes, which we would do some work for. Had to get into some boiler work and pumps and stuff like that. Anything just to keep the doors open and keep food on the table. And then once Prohibition ended, it was crazy. It was the wild, wild west. I mean, everyone was ordering stills, and it got to be a very busy time, and business was good and everything like that. And and then you had the world wars that came through, and production stopped for a while there because everything was being made for the war efforts and everything like that, and survived through that. And then I guess in the 60s and everything, they said distilleries had so many, they were making so much whiskey and putting so many barrels away that was the best time ever for whiskey and everything. And then just like everything, I mean, everything goes in cycles and everything. I think the vodka came around, kind of started taking the market away from whiskeys. Then you had your gins and tequila, and really during that like 70s and 80s and everything, I guess, whiskey was looked at your grandfather's drink, right, or your dad's drink, right? Neat, on the rocks, splash of water, period. You mixed anything with it, your master distillers got upset with you, and you're not supposed to mix anything with it. You're supposed to only drink it neat, on the rocks, or with a splash of water. And it just really wasn't that attractive of a drink to the younger generation or to women or anything like that. It was just your grandfather's drink. And I know when my dad started in the business in the 60s, I believe he said there was over 45 or 50 active distilleries in the state of Kentucky. When I started in the 90s, there was 9.
Wow.
Yeah. So just between larger companies buying up smaller distilleries and then closing the smaller ones and moving everything over, consolidating and everything, just whiskey and bourbon not being that grand drink that it is nowadays and everything, things were very different. We had to branch out. We were always whiskey and brewing work, beer, but we've had to branch out into chemicals, confectionery, pharmaceutical, other industries like that to keep our doors open during those lean times. And then kind of in the late 90s, early 2000s, really things just started going crazy again. I think there was a few reasons for that, my own personal reasons. I think the small batch and single barrel programs that some of the distilleries started doing really got the interest of people. It just gave people, I think, a greater appreciation of different types of bourbons and everything. And then I give credit to the mixologists who were like, hey, you can mix bourbon with fruit juices or with this or with that and really make some fun drinks. And I think that got the younger generation and the women excited about it. And then, the next thing all these people these entrepreneurs who maybe we saw a lot of people who were lawyers or doctors or, other type of businesses in their younger lives who now wanted to do something different, right? They made their money, they wanted to do something, and all of a sudden they were like, let's open a distillery. How do we do that? And I remember it's probably right around 2000, I met a gentleman at the Alltech alcohol school in Lexington. Alltech had a big alcohol school every year. And this guy came up to me and was like, hey, I want to make, I've been trying to get a hold of you. I want to distill alcohol in my restaurant and serve it at my bar. And I'm like, well, you can't do that. I was like, it's not allowed. He's like, no. I hired a lobbyist. I had legislation changed. I run my stills over here behind this glass wall. And then I take it out the back door and take it down to the state store and I sell it to them. And I come around the front and I buy it back from them. And then I bring it into my bar area and I sell it at my bar. I'm like, holy crap. It's like, I got to go out here and see this place. And the guy's name is Kevin Settles. He's with Bardstown out in Boise, Idaho.
Okay.
And so me and my cousin jumped on a plane, went out to Boise, Idaho, and was like, we got to see this place. And sure enough, and he had a German still and was doing exactly what he said. And we stayed out there the whole week and visited with them and ran that still and did this and that. And on the way back from Idaho, we were like, we're going to make us 100-gallon pot still. And we're just going to see what happens.
Yeah.
And even though my dad tells me he never said this, my dad, I know he said, he's like, y'all are wasting your time. This will never take off. He's like, the federal government will never let this happen. He's like, there's permits are too expensive. They're too hard to get. You might sell a few of these things, but if y'all want to make one. But so we made one. And we got our experimental permits from, at the time, the ATF, but now the TTB,
Yeah.
and was able to run it. And, we sold for the first year or two, probably none, but we had fun running it. And then we got a couple people interested in it, and we sold a couple, and then a few more. And then all of a sudden, we knew exactly which state changed legislation, because when a state changed their legislation, we got 100 calls that week.
Right.
I mean, the phones just blew up. People were calling from everywhere in that state, like, hey, we want to do a still. We want to do a still. And, I would say since the early 2000s, we have probably done over 700 or 800 distilleries.
Wow.
And
Jeez.
they're still coming.
Yeah. So, Mike, it kind of leads to my next question here. I think it's a good point to ask it. I mean, obviously, Vendome's been around 120 years. What is it that makes you guys the brand? I mean, what is it about? Is it the quality? Is it the relationships? Is it just a combination of everything? What is it that makes people say, you mentioned earlier, 95% of the whiskey is probably made on your stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's huge. That's crazy huge. What do you attribute that to?
I think it's just kind of what you touched on, a little bit of everything. I think the 120 years of experience and there were definitely other companies that, copper is a lost art, working with copper.
Yeah.
I mean, copper and brass and those metals were very popular back in the early 1900s up to the mid 1900s. But then when stainless steel came about in the mid 1900s, everyone was like, oh, well, stainless steel is where it's at. We get everything's, there's no reason we need copper and all that stuff anymore. And for whatever reason, a lot of companies lost their coppersmith abilities. There were some good companies that we competed with that were also family businesses that the next generation decided not to run it, take it over. So they closed down. And we just made it through all that. Right. And we knew that copper, copper is our bread and butter. I mean, we do a ton of stainless work as well, but copper is our bread and butter. That's what we know, that TIG welding copper, you're not going to find in more than a handful of companies throughout the United States. It's just a lost art. We don't hire copper welders. We hire good welders, and we hope we can make them into good copper welders.
Gotcha.
So we understand that, and we are always trying to get our guys to learn how to weld copper. And we have the guys who work with our copper and do our work. They are so special, and they're more artists than anything.
Yeah.
I mean, they are absolutely incredible workers, and I owe a lot to them. But I think between that, the fact that we stand behind our product, I mean, you don't know how many times I'd be sitting here at 8 o'clock at night and I'll get a text or a phone call and, hey, we need someone here tomorrow morning. Can you get them here? Absolutely. We'll have someone there tomorrow, whether it be somewhere in Kentucky or, somewhere in the Midwest or somewhere out in the Northeast, wherever. We will get someone in a truck and get them to you. I always give the example. We work at every Anheuser-Busch plant in the United States. We do their copper cooking coils in their cookers. And if they have a pinhole leak, I mean, they'll call me I always tease. Typically, it's 3:30 on a Friday afternoon, right after my guys have left for the weekend. But I can call them, and they'll turn around, and they'll head back, and they'll load up a truck, drive by their house, get some clothes, and they're headed that way. I just have very dedicated workers. We will always make sure our customers are taken care of. We got a good reputation for that. Our customer satisfaction, I think, is very high. And so I think it's just a combination of all that.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's definitely making some great whiskey. There's no question about it. And speaking of great whiskey, let's jump back over here to this Roaming Man Rye. Matt, what do you pick up in terms of the palate and finish on this?
Well, one thing of note with this is how much the nose has changed since it's been sitting in the glass here. I'm picking up, just to go back to that, like now there's a lot more cherry notes. It's like really opened up. There's cherry, there's some floral, little chocolate on the nose as well. But the palate for me, I can see how this has a high corn content for the rye at 45% corn, 51% rye. Pick up like that sweet, like nice dry cornbread right up front. The grain is definitely there. I pick up that rye grain, a little bit of honey with it as well. There's a spicy note on it as well. That's not as much peppercorn, but to me, it's more like jalapeno or like capsaicin, like a pepper type spice. And that goes with the finish. It's got a nice strong finish with it, nice warming finish. Not that peppercorn. It's again like that jalapeno or that habanero, kind of that earthy vegetal heat that comes with the finish for me.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's a little more drying than I remember it being.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of get that drying effect, a little tannic.
Yeah.
On the finish. I mean, it's not overwhelming, but more so, just thinking in terms of that Bardstown bourbon, the high rye bourbon we just drank. I did not get that kind of effect off of it. So this one does have that kind of tannic finish, a little drying, but not overwhelming. Again, it's 100 proof, so it's not super, it's not going to blow you out of the water. I do get that spice from the rye, but I agree with you, Matt. It's not like that. It's not a peppercorn type of spice. There's something different to it. I did detect, I got a little cherry. It was almost like an artificial kind of cherry flavor. Which was kind of strange because usually when I pick up a cherry, I think like Luxardos, those deep, dark, rich cherries. This just had a little bit of a cherry taste to it, almost like a cough syrup cherry, where it's a kind of an artificial,
not maraschino
nasty,
in syrup or something.
Yeah, just a different type of cherry flavor on the profile, but still enjoyable. I really like it. I like the Roaming Man Rye, but again, I think it just speaks to the pot still. I mean, I think you get some of the different funky notes. We call it funky. I mean, just different notes. It's not stripped as clean as, on a column still. So you do get a lot of those congeners that are left over that are not going to be off of a column still where they're stripping that stuff out. So Mike, what do you think? What else you pick up in terms of the palate and finish? Anything stand out for you?
Y'all mentioned that cherry, and I do pick that up, but I tell you, it warms you all the way down, but I do like it. I mean, like it's and again, I'm not a huge rye fan, so I always preface this with this, but this is good. I like it a lot. But you taste it right when you put it in, and it's got a nice warm feeling all the way down.
Yeah. A Tennessee hug. Of course, Matt and I don't get that experience since we're doing dry January, unfortunately. But we get that nice sensation of the rye spice in the back of the palate. I could get it back there in the throat as far as I can without letting it go on down. But it's really good. And, like I said, we had Greg, I think it's Edom. I can't remember if it's Edom or Idom, but the master distiller on the show a couple years ago. Really enjoyed talking to him. And, I'm a big fan of Gatlinburg. My wife and I go down there all the time. So it's always fun to stop in there at Sugarlands to check them out. So, Matt, what are your final thoughts, though, on the Roaming Man Rye?
It's good. Like you said, it's a little drier, a little more tannic than I remembered, but good representation of a nice pot-stilled whiskey.
Yeah, I think so. Mike, any final thoughts on that one?
And I will say, I think it's hard to make a lot of people do it. So, I'll preface it with that. But I think making a whiskey on a pot still is not an easy task. I do think it's a little tougher to do, especially to make a consistent product. But that's really good. I like that a lot.
Awesome. Well, guys, I'll tell you what, we're at the end of round 2. So why don't we take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors. We'll be back with more with Mike Sherman, Vice President with Vendome Copper, in just a minute. Bluegrass Distillers is a craft distillery with a passion for producing exceptional bourbon. They're committed to the art of distillation, using locally sourced grains to create a distinct and flavorful bourbon that captures the essence of Kentucky's rich whiskey heritage. Bluegrass Distillers takes pride in their small batch, hands-on approach, ensuring quality and attention to detail in every bottle they make, like their limited release 9-year-old Elkwood Reserve Bourbon, which is currently available for purchase at their brand new Visitor Center in Midway, Kentucky, their distillery in Lexington, and select stores throughout Kentucky. And with their new distillery slated to begin operation in spring of 2024, you'll be able to pick up even more exceptional spirits from them, like their wheated bourbon and their blue corn bourbon in the spring and fall. For more details and to plan your visit, check out their website at bluegrassdistillers.com. From our good friends at The Stave comes Lexington's newest hotspot to meet up with friends, have fun, and eat some great food. District 7 Social is a social and beer hall, but it's a lot more than that. Located in Lexington's Distillery District, it's the home of Lexington's first duck pin bowling lanes, and it also features a self-serve beer wall. That's right, self-serve. And if you want more, they've got it. You can try one of their delicious cocktails from the bar, or order some great German fusion food from their on-site eatery, Germanish. So what are you waiting for? Be seen, be social. District 7 Social. All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here live tonight in the Bourbon Life Studios, it's my good beanie-wearing buddy friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there, man?
I am good, Mark. I am sober and good.
Bone dried.
That's right.
Bone dry for the 31st day.
Yeah. How are you? Are you doing all
I'm
right?
doing well, Matt. We're down to 3 hours and 57 minutes, and so we're right on the money there. We're almost through this dry January, but I'm having a great time, man. This is a really fun show.
Yeah,
I'm enjoying this, because we do a lot of master distillers and master blenders, people that are making the whiskey. But this episode's different for us because we get to talk to the guy that's making the products that is making the whiskey. So it's a unique view into the bourbon world. So I'm really having a good time here. We are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. Again, we appreciate their sponsorship. We couldn't do it without them and all of our other sponsors. But Matt, with that said, would you like to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
Absolutely. We have the man who is making the product that is making the whiskey. Just like Mark said, we have the vice president from Vendome Copper and Brass Works, Mike Sherman, and he is back for the third and final round. Mike, how you doing?
Doing great. Enjoying it.
Yeah.
Appreciate y'all having me on.
He's drinking the whiskey. He's having a great time.
I'm glad at least one of us is drinking the whiskey tonight.
That's right.
Cheers, my friend. Yeah.
Yeah. So this round, I jumped back to a Kentucky whiskey. And the reason I chose this one is because I know that they are a Vendome customer. They are a Kentucky brand, which was important. I wanted to do that. But this is kind of one of the legacy brands. This is Old Forester. Been around forever. Been around as long as Vendome Copper, pretty much, for the most part, I guess. And, obviously a big fan of Old Forester, their products that they put out. I chose the 1920 just because it's high proof, 115 proof. Something just a little different, little higher proof. But this one, the mash bill on it, 72 corn, 18 rye, 10% malted barley. It's non-age stated, so I'm not sure. I can't remember. I think we've talked about this before, Matt, but I can't remember off the top of my head if we're looking at that 6. I mean, because Old Forester, Brown-Forman does the warehouse
heat cycle, right?
The heat cycling aging. Yeah. So their stuff is generally going to be younger because they heat cycle, so it actually kind of ages a little faster. So I think their stuff's like 4 to 5 years old, but it makes it kind of more like a 6 to 7 year old whiskey. Is that right?
I'm not going to quote you on the numbers, but your theory is there.
the theory, it's in theory. Yeah. So it's not actually aged for like 7 or 8 years, but with the heat cycling, it gives it that kind of that impact. So, but we won't waste any more time with that. But yeah, so let's talk about the nose, Matt. What do you pick up on this one in terms of the nose?
Yeah, so this is, we already said, this is the 1920, the Old Forester.
Yeah.
Nose on this one brings the fruit forward for me. That cherry that we were just talking about a little bit with the roaming man comes through. There's kind of like some orchard fruit or red wine fruit, maybe like some plum or kind of like some little apple or like dark berries, kind of some of those red wine aromas. There's also a good influence from the barrel on this one. I would really pick up like those sweet wood sugars come through. Kind of that toasted brown sugar is really present on this one. That toasty oak, but certainly not overpowering, over oaked. Just really, really well-rounded. Has a lot of great flavors, a lot of great aromas coming through with it.
Yeah, it's funny, Matt, because I was like, it kind of reminds me of the 1910. Of course, that 1910 is the double oaked, so it does have the much oakier aroma to it. But you can see this kind of as the base product, in a barrel that goes on to become that double oak. But you get that same kind of cherry aroma like Matt talked about, but that oak influence, the oak sugars are there. Just really nothing's out of balance. That 1910, obviously it's been aged in that secondary barrel that's heavily charred. So it's a little bit out of balance with that sweetness, that brown sugary toasted marshmallow experience. This one though, really nice, and at 115 proof, man, it just does not, it doesn't nose at that high of a proof at all. Because I can put my nose down into the glass and it's just not, it's not really affecting me. So Mike, anything that stands out with you on the nose on this one?
I do smell those berries that Matt talked about. And I love the color of this.
Yeah. Beautiful, isn't it?
It's absolutely, I love the color of this bourbon.
Yeah. And it's clinging to my glass too. I know nobody can see that, unfortunately, but man, the way it just runs down the glass, the legs on it, it's impressive. Yeah. And that color, the color is really nice. So Mike, let's jump back a little bit, talk about, we were talking off camera and I meant to ask this in round 2, the name Vendome. What's the story behind that name?
Well, if you find out, let me know, because we actually, we don't know a whole lot. We don't know why my great-grandfather named it Vendome. We know Vendome's French. We know there's a Vendome Square, a Vendome Tower, a Vendome Jewelry. We don't know if he went to Paris and was... We don't know.
Yeah.
It's one thing that was never passed down that I can't even believe it wasn't, right? How do you not get the story behind the name of the company? And we have put it out there like many times, just like in conversations like this that we know, and we get emails like all the time. Oh yeah, this has to be why it's named Vendome, and it very well might be, but we don't know for sure the reason behind it.
Yeah, that's funny. I love it. But yeah, you'd think somewhere along the line somebody would have written something down, or there would be some type of little story that your great grandfather would have written somewhere, a note that just said, "My trip to Paris in 1902 was great. I saw Vendome."
Exactly, right? Something.
But hey, now you guys can just make it up, whatever you want to do, right? You can just say this is.
That's true. That's true.
So talking about the history going back, your great grandfather, and you talked about this a little bit earlier. Talk about the craftsmanship. The artistry that goes into it. Has that changed a lot? You talked about pictures, seeing how things were done, the wood floors, the craftsmanship, and everything. Obviously similarities, but have there been significant changes as well over the last 100 years that you guys have been operating?
Yeah, naturally as a business owner, you're always trying to find more efficient ways to make your product and still put out great quality and great, we take a lot of pride on being a custom fabricator. Excuse me. So we don't want to make the same product for every single person. So we So everyone's like, well, why does it take you all so long to get your product out? Because it's not like we have 250 gallon, 500 gallon, 750 gallon pot stills on a shelf, and someone calls and says, "Hey, we're ready for one." We just, okay, well, here it is. We'll ship it over to you tomorrow. We want our very creative, unique, to come up with something different that makes their equipment or stand apart from everybody else's, whether it be their logo or putting a certain shape into their equipment. And you see that a lot in the craft distilleries. I think, naturally with the large distilleries, if they call and say they need a replacement part, they're not really changing anything. They're going to put exactly what they got in there, right back in there. But with the new distilleries, they're relying a lot on trying to get visitors and that visitor experience and everything. So we are always encouraging our customers, what's different, give us your story. What can we do to make yours stand apart from the guy who's going to open another distillery 10 miles down the road from you? We take a lot of pride in that. So in making those parts, we do, it's a little bit of old school and a little bit of new school. Old school is we still what I call heat and beat. It's copper, you put heat to it, and you got it on a carbon steel fixture of some kind, and you can beat that over with a rawhide mallet and make it whatever shape you want it to look like. And we still do a lot of that. But then again, we have CNC machines that we can do, CNC mills and stuff that we can do logos and cool plaques and different things with that as well, and implement into the equipment as well. So while it's still some old school stuff, we definitely have new technology as well to try to increase efficiency and things like that, and to create some cool pieces for our customers and for the public.
Mike, is there anything that stands out? I'm just curious, from a production standpoint, any client with special requests, anything that you guys have created that just stands out to you as like, this is one of the most unique things that we've been asked to put together, or anything that you can share at least with us?
Yeah. I think everyone's looking, all of our customers are always looking for that unique piece and stuff. I think one of the coolest pot stills that we did was for the Honey House out in Colorado, and the pot still actually looks like a beehive.
Really?
And we got brass fixtures welded to the pot that looks like honey dripping down the pot still.
Yeah.
And it's really, and it's all mirror finish, polished and everything, and it's pretty cool. So the Spirit Safe at Wilderness Trail in Danville, Kentucky, it's got it's a Spirit Safe, stainless steel Spirit Safe, and inside of it is a metal figurine that we constructed over 300 different parts that go together to make this. And as the spirits, the high wine and the low wine, are flowing through over the paddles, the figurine is actually moving and it looks like he's pushing a barrel. And it's one of the only, it is probably the only Spirit Safe that we have moving parts like that of a figurine inside of it. But we love doing that kind of stuff. I mean, like we pretty much came up with that concept with Pat and Shane and designed the whole thing in our shop and machined all the parts and I guarantee you we did not make $1 on it. We probably lost $50,000 on it, but it was very cool. It's one of those ones that when people see it, they remember it. Mm-hmm. And it's just those are the type of things we like to create. And I always use the example of like Main Street in downtown Louisville. I mean, you start with Copper and Kings, which is brandy, but Copper and Kings and Rabbit Hole and Angel's Envy and Old Forester and Evan Williams Bourbon Experience and Peerless and now you got Buzzard's Roost down there on 6th Street as well, or 6th and Main as well. I mean, that's like 6 or 7, 8 distilleries right there within a 2-mile distance that people go and visit every weekend, and you just want to make sure they have a unique experience in every single one of them. Because if they
Yeah.
walk in and they see the same type of equipment and the same thing every time, they're not going to go through every single one of them. So, so we are always trying to say, what can we do different to make your experience unique, to where people will want to come see you, and we're always thinking about that.
A little bit earlier in the show, Mike, you talked about, how many stills you guys have done over the last few years, and it's significant, obviously. So, I mean, you're in high demand. You make all these stills for people. How is it? I mean, how do you guys manage to keep up with the demand?
It's a great question. So we did get to a point where we were about a 2-year wait lead time, and we knew that we didn't want to be that long. I mean, like, that was just way too long. Most people building a distillery, a year to 15 months, they got to put a building up. They got to get their permits. They got a lot to do on their end. So a year to 15 months is not a big deal. So we're always looking for new employees. We give weld tests every week, daily to potential welders. Hoping we can find some good welders out there and bring them in and create them to what we need them to be. We've hired more people in the office, more project managers, draftsmen, designers, engineers. Probably the biggest thing that we just did, we did just lease a 40,000 square foot building about 3.5 miles away from us. We're moving all of our stainless steel tank fabrication to that location, which is probably 4 to 6 weeks out from that actually happening. And that will give us more space in our current shop to work on more projects. And I do think we can get it back down to like a 12 to 15 month lead time on equipment and service our customers a little bit better. So.
Yeah, that's great. So guys, let's jump back to the whiskey real quick and talk a little bit about that in terms of the palate and the finish. Matt, this Old Forester 1920, what do you pick up on the palate and the finish?
Palate on this one, to me, big on the caramel right up front. Caramel, toffee. I get like toffee peanuts, really kind of distinct on the palate for me. Then there's like a sweetness or a softness that to me tastes kind of like nougat type sweetness. It's sort of got that vanilla, sort of that creaminess. Then there's also like a dry cocoa powder on the palate. And then the finish plays through with that cocoa powder, comes through a little bit chocolatey, cocoa-like, but then mint, like peppermint, really brings the finish for me with the spicy peppermint coming through, kind of like that menthol, eucalyptus type note on the finish. Just really nice. This is a favorite of mine. I really, really like the 1920, and it's drinking really nice tonight.
Matt, it's funny because you're talking about the chocolate, and I was nosing it, and I almost was getting like a hint on the nose of like a Tootsie Roll, like a little bit of a kind of a chocolatey type of an aroma on the nose. And I thought, well, maybe I'm crazy. So I'm glad when you said that on the palate and the finish. So maybe I'm not as crazy as I thought. On the palate, I still get some of that cherry. It just comes through to me, and maybe it's just the nose that I'm still picking up as I taste it. But I still get that kind of a cherry aroma. But again, I agree with you in terms of the caramel, that vanilla that comes through as well. Nice spiciness. Again, 115 proof. It's 115 proof, but it's not going to blow your doors off. So it's to me, it drinks really nice. I forget, I always talk about 1910 being one of my favorites, just because I love that double oaked, that finished on there. But man, just every time I go back to 1920, I'm just like, man, this is such an outstanding pour. You can find this pretty much anywhere, pretty much every day, like $55-$60 a bottle, maybe something like that. Just a great pour. So Mike, what about you? What do you pick up? Anything else on the palate and the finish?
No, I love it. I mean, this Old Forester, their products I always have some Old Forester on my bar. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I think I'm a big fan of what they do and the products they put out. And and this is one of my favorites. So for sure.
They've got the new 1924, and I was trying to snag a bottle before I sent the samples over to you, Mike. But unfortunately, I got the bottle, but it was after I already sent those out. So I was hoping we could share that 1924 because I've yet to try it. But maybe next time we can we can do that. But yeah, I'm a big fan of this. Old Forester, the products, everything they put out, I really enjoy it. But I forget how good this 1920 really is. And at 115 proof, I love the higher proof bourbons. And man, this one just drinks right in there for me. So Mike, we're almost in round 3 here already, but let's talk about kind of the future, what that looks like. What things are going to be going on with Vendome and how you guys are adjusting to the future.
Like we've been on a hell of a roll the last 2 decades. Since the early 2000s, and it's hard to believe it's 2024. It's crazy. And with the amount of equipment that we have put out there, I guess the best thing about copper in my eyes is 2 things. And I don't know. One is you got to have copper in your production somewhere to make a quality product. There is actually a reaction between the copper and the distillate that keeps some of the sulfurs and sulfides and odors behind in the stills that you don't want coming over into your product. And there are very high technical papers written on it and everything, but the bottom line is and what a lot of master distillers will say is that the more copper you have in your production, the better product that you'll produce. So that's good for me, right? Vendome, that's what we do, and that's good for me. The other great thing about copper is that it doesn't last forever. It does wear out. So as those chemical reactions happen, the sulfurs and sulfides and odors and all that stuff, it adheres to the copper. And quality knows exactly when the stills need to be cleaned, because they're testing that product every single day. And as soon as they're like, oops, something's wrong, they shut the stills down and they clean them out. Well, every time you clean it and you're washing those sulfides and those things that those contaminants that you don't want coming over, it takes a little bit of the copper with it. So copper actually wears out in that process. So depending on how hard you run, how aggressive you clean, it could be a 15 to 20 year life on a column still.
Okay.
Probably more like a 20 to 25, even a 30-year life on a pot still. But I know those products are going to eventually wear out and need to be replaced. So in that sense, having done over 700 distilleries in the last 20, 25 years, we do know there will be maintenance and repairs and equipment that will need to be replaced over the years and everything like that for the next generation and all that. So I do think we'll be fine, and this boom will eventually die down, and there won't be as many new distilleries, but I think there's going to be a long time before we run out of work. So
yeah, well that's good to hear. Well, guys, we are at the end of the show here, but before we wrap it up, Mike, any final thoughts from you? Anything you want to share before we get out of here?
No, I appreciate y'all having me on, and I do love to tell the story of Vendome. It's something my family is very proud of. We don't do public tours, but we do have a lot of people stop by and just kind of poke their head in our big doors in the summertime when we're fabricating and stuff. And typically, if I see someone out there, I'll probably walk out there and talk to them and give them a little bit of a history about the company and everything. But we are very proud of it, and I really appreciate y'all having me on so I can tell the story, and I really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate it for sure. Matt, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Mike, thanks for taking the time to sit down and do exactly what you said. Tell us the story. talk to us about Vendome, about your history, your past, the company's history and past, and also what you all have been doing in the present, what's headed for the future. It's been a great time sitting down and chatting with you, and I'm really glad we got to connect and finally make this show happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sorry it took us so long, Mike, but I'm glad we were finally able to make it happen, and we won't wait that long. We'll do it again. I feel like we could probably do another hour or two easily in conversation with you about stories and different things you guys work on and stuff. So I think there's a lot of stuff still that we could touch on. So one of these days we'll get you back in here. We'll do this.
Absolutely. You send me 3 samples and we'll talk all you want. Every
Forget
time.
that. You can come to Lexington. You come to Lexington and we'll go through the 500 or 600 bottles that are over here.
There we go. I like to hear that. Okay.
We'll figure out what we're going to drink. So we appreciate it, Mike. Thank you so much for joining us. We've had a great time. I've really enjoyed getting to hear more about your background, like Matt said, and just the history, the story of Vendome. It's really cool, even though we don't know what the name means. It's a great story and love it. Congratulations, to all your success, and here's to much more. So hopefully that continues, like you said, for you guys. And I guess I'll get ready to wrap it up here. We appreciate you guys, our listeners. We are the Bourbon Life Podcast, of course, presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate them as our presenting sponsor. We appreciate all of our sponsors as well. Like I said before, we couldn't do the show without them. We appreciate you, our listeners. Thank you for whatever, like Matt always says, whatever time of day it is, morning, noon, or night, whatever it is, you get your Bourbon Life fix. We appreciate you joining us. You can feel free to join us on Facebook or on Instagram at The Bourbon Life. Follow us there. You can join the Bourbon Lifers, our private Facebook group. We'd love to have you in that group. We have some fun discussions and topics in there. So check that out. You can also email us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com if you have an idea for a show or something you'd like to hear or see. And if you feel so inclined, please feel free to leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. With that said, I'm going to wrap it up. Send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the Bourbon Life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the Bourbon Life.